A lot of hunters, they have their favorite tree stand, they have their favorite blind, and it's okay to hunt that regularly. But you do run the risk of deer in the area patterning you.
If you have a spot that's 50 years old, and let's say it was logged 20 years ago, clear cut, chances are the deer are still using that spot. Hey, you spend all year planning, scouting, and getting ready to hunt deer. Did you ever think that they might be hunting you? This is Deer Hunting TV.
A lot of hunters, they have their favorite tree stand, they have their favorite blind, and it's okay to hunt that regularly. But you do run the risk of deer in the area patterning you.
That being said, there are places where a good tree spot, stand, is going to be productive year after year, but it means that you have to hunt that judiciously. If you go to any good hunting place, invariably you're going to find some old ladder stand, some stand that some guy nailed up there maybe 50 years ago. If you find places that were hunted and have permanent stands in them, that's where I start looking, even if the forest has changed. So let me explain that. If you have a spot that's 50 years old, and let's say it was logged 20 years ago, clear cut, chances are the deer are still using that spot. There's something about that topography that deer like, and they're going to use it time and time again. But to hunt that spot day after day, it's the law of diminishing returns. What happens, deer will pattern you, and you're going to find that your sightings are going to go down, and especially your buck sightings are going to go down over time if you're not careful in how you hunt that spot.
So, a better idea, instead of plopping down in the same tree stand every single day, is to have a series. 4 might be just enough, and why? Well, for the 4 different compass points, and that gives you 4 different stands if the winds change. It's a really easy, good scenario. Even on a small property, if you're only moving your tree stand setup 30, 80, 100 yards, it still makes you disappear in the woods.
Human scent lasts in the woods, it can be days. And you'll see that if you're hunting in a stand. A good example for me is I like to cut firewood. And I'll come in there with my dirty clothes and my chainsaws, and I'll walk through the woods and I'll do my business and work and then come out. And then sometimes I've hunted spots that were near areas where I've logged. And if you watch deer behavior in there, days afterwards, they're smelling the spot where you, now they might not be scared, they might not be running away, but it's intel that they're gathering that they know that there is a predator present. Whether that's a lumberjack or a deer hunter, scent will last in the woods. You have to take every measure possible when you're hunting to reduce your scent imprint, and that's going to increase your deer sightings and eventually your success rate.
Animals like whitetail bucks, especially a mature whitetail buck, they don't have these magical powers. They're not the unicorns running around sprinkling fairy dust all over. No, they are just animals, and they see things literally in black and white. Danger, no danger. So yes, can they remember what happened, something dangerous in a situation? Say they got shot at, say you come out of a tree stand and bumped them. They will remember that, especially if it appeared to be a threat to their existence.
I believe that mature deer, period, whether it's a buck or a doe, that have some type of memory capability, not the same as a human. I don't think they remember things from year to year, but they're a prey species, they're trying to survive, so they will remember certain events, and especially repeated events that happen in a short amount of time. An example there, you get busted coming out of your tree stand. They don't necessarily remember and then avoid the area altogether. They remember to an extent that there might have been a dangerous situation there, and then they skirt the areas. And that's where I see it a lot on outfitted hunts, where they might have a really good stand and they put a guy in there day after day or week after week. And then when I get up in that stand after, the season's been going for 2 months, and I see deer coming through the area, they're skirting that area and they're not coming past that tree like they normally would.
Bows, crossbows, Bob Rob.
Dun, 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 dun. So here we are hunting again with Trophy Ridge Outfitters in northeastern Wyoming near the Devil's Tower. And we've hunted the early season many times here, and people often ask me, well, why do you hunt the early season and don't wait until the rut? Because during the early season, when they're still in the velvet, they're much easier to pattern. And so out here at Trophy Ridge, Ralph Dampman, who owns the place, and his guides, they run a bunch of cameras, they do a lot of scouting, they pattern these deer, and they know where they're going, when they're going there, and why they're going there. Why are they going there? They're going there for 2 reasons: because there's really good, high quality agriculture for them to eat, alfalfa especially, and there's water. And near those 2 sources of nutrition for the deer are really cool, secluded places for them to bed, and they don't have to travel a long distance to get both water and food. So what you're looking for when you're hunting in hot weather in early season is just that. You're looking for food and water and travel routes where the deer can get to those places without moving a lot from their bedding area, and that's where you want to set up. So that's what we did here on this particular hunt, like we always do.
Deer and Deer Hunting TV is brought to you by
So we get out there at 2 in the afternoon. It's not dark until like 7:30 or 8 o'clock. So of course, we're sweltering. It's 90 some degrees, it's humid. We've got the thermosol going. We got all the windows and the blind open so we can cool down. But the minute we see the first deer, we zip up and we get ready.
It's a giant. One's a buck, little one.
Early on in our hunt, here comes a lone 8-point. He's in the velvet, he's a young buck. He comes in the field, he goes over the fence, he hops over, he starts feeding. He's 20 yards from us, he's 15 yards from us, he's 10 yards from us, he's 5 yards from us. He gets into the shady side of our blind, and in the shade, he lays down in the shade of our blind. I could have reached out with an arrow and bopped him between the horns. Here come some does. Here come some small bucks. We're trying to look at them and go, okay, they're coming this particular way. Probably any buck that we might want to shoot will come this way. And then we look up on the side of the mountain, and guess what? Here is a pretty nice buck. nice and slow, taking his time, sensing everything. And then when he decided to commit to the field, he trotted the last 100 yards. And he gave us a broadside shot at 30 yards with a doe 10 yards out our other window, for heaven's sakes. We watched him go down over here about, I don't know, 50 yards from a blind. So let's go see what we got. I'm quivering. It was awesome. Northeastern Wyoming whitetail. There's a million of these things around here when you hunt on good property like we are here with Trophy Ridge Outfitters. Pretty cool hunt. I love hunting this place. It's loaded with deer. I'm short, you know.
Number one, I say start at 40. For me, that is my maximum distance that I want to shoot when I'm hunting, 40 yards with my crossbow. I do the same thing with my bow, but if you're like me, you might have trained yourself to sight in a little bit differently. Over the last couple years, I've learned it's better if I start at the longer distances and then move in, especially with these really new high-speed, high-tech crossbows. This year I'm shooting the TX 440 from 10 Point. I love this crossbow. There's so much technology built into it, but that will not make up for any shortcomings I have as a hunter. And also, it's not gonna make up for what that deer might do. Even though I love shooting this crossbow at the range at long distances, I shouldn't even advertise them, but I will. I'll shoot it at 60, 70. I've even taken shots at 100 at the practice range. I'll never take a shot at a deer that far. What that does, it helps me with my confidence when I'm hunting, but it also helps me know that when I'm gonna take that 40-yard shot, I know I can make it 10 times out of 10 if I wait for that deer to be positioned at the right angle. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start at 40, number one. Number two, I'm gonna use my broadheads. That's very important when you're hunting with any bow or crossbow, is to shoot with what you're gonna be hunting with. I shoot severs, I put those in practice mode, and I make sure that there's not gonna be any differences if I'm shooting a field point at that target as opposed to shooting a broadhead. And there are differences. Even with mechanical broadheads, you're gonna get flight characteristics that are gonna change. And then you have to take into consideration your optic. Even if it has those multi-reticles on there that are already pre-built, say 20, 30, 40, you can't trust that. I don't care how good the crossbow is, you have to suit it to your shooting style, what kind of bolt you're using, what kind of broadhead you're using, and that specific distance. I have found that those don't necessarily line up. My 40-yard quote-unquote pin or aiming sight could be the second notch. It could be the third notch. You really have to test that, and that's why I start at those longer distances. 20, 30, 40 yards, that's all I need to know, and if I can cover those 10-yard increments in between, I'm gonna be set. And for me, it's usually gonna be about 2 aiming points on the scope with my crossbow, and I know that bolt is gonna hit where I want it to go.
There's nothing like practicing like you mean it, and that's why I love today's modern broadheads. It allows me to practice like I'm going to hunt. Sever has a brand new broadhead out this year that I'm pretty excited about. This is the new T1.5 hybrid. It's a 4-blade, which you don't find in expandables. Any Sever that I've shot since these things came out 8 years ago is that it leads to quick death, but that wound is going to be less likely to clot up. I have not seen that yet on a Sever with these new bleeder blades. The bleeder blades are in place, super sharp, and that's basically leading the way for that huge cut, which is actually a slap cut. So when you get to this broadhead inside a deer, when they say 1.5 inches, that's the minimum. And I've never seen it at 1.5 inches. I've only seen it much larger than that. Wounds typically that you can put your whole hand in, because when that deer is standing, quartering slightly away, even on the broadside shots, when those blades hit that hide, it opens it up. And I'm talking 4 or 5, I've even seen 6-inch holes going through the deer. But that hybrid broadhead, it gives you that confidence that you're gonna make the most lethal shot, cause the most hemorrhaging, because that's what bow hunting is about. Best of all, you can practice with these broadheads and then still hunt with them. All you have to do is there's a second hole. If you look in here, there's 2 holes in the ferrule. The one is actually holding the blades together with the set screw. They give you extra set screws. You can put one of them in that extra hole that locks the blades in place. So those main blades are tucked inside the ferrule, allows me to take a couple practice shots before I go hunting. When I'm normally shooting my bow, however, I use the Sever. It's a bullet point, field point that is weighted, and the flight characteristics are the same as this broadhead. So I'm gonna use that throughout the summer leading up to the season, and even during the season practicing before I switch to broadheads. And I should also mention, Sever broadheads are only sold factory direct, so you can buy as many as you want. You can buy 1, you can buy 20, super fast and super lethal.